What's going on, everybody? BobbyFi here. I'm only going to be here for a few minutes. I'll probably be here for about 12. Sheets is going to update his projections at 6:45 Eastern time, just to give you guys a heads up. Happy to try to get this live thing in because it's really been a hectic day. I got a lot of family stuff going on. I got to get on a call at 6:15 Eastern, so we're going to try and get to it as quickly as possible. Fortunately, it's a small slate, so we can probably cover it all. It's going to be a very stars and scrubsy type of slate. So one thing you can consider doing, I think, is trying to middle out your builds a little bit. Guys who won't be owned that at the higher tier that maybe you want to take some shots on, which is what I would be trying to do tonight. I would play some Kawhi Leonard. I think he's going to be low owned. I would play some Valanciunas at a price that seems too high, but we know he's got a ceiling, especially against the Dallas team that's front court help. Front court is not that strong. Those are two ones that I would look at. I would look at Christian Wood. I don't think I would go with it. It is a little revenge narrative there going, but Christian Wood, Joe Val, and McCollum and Leonard are the spend ups that I think get the lower ownership. So those are the guys I'd be working with tonight. The obvious ones, I do think Luka is the best play and will score the most points here enough. Oh, and Steph. I forgot to mention Steph. But I think maybe playing Steph and Luka together is an interesting route to go because it's gonna be a lot about builds. And I think that you're going to see most of the ownership go to Luka, Booker. I think you're going to see a ton of. It looks like Paul. You know, with all the stuff on my ownership projections are probably going to be a little bit behind. So bear with me on some of this stuff because Luka is going to be the most popular player on the slate, I believe, and we've just got so much value. It's just too easy to get him in. So what other guys can we include into that mix? You're going to get a lot of Norman Powell, a lot of DeAndre Ayton tonight. You're going to get a lot of Booker. You're going to get a lot of Shea, assuming that he plays, which I think he's going to. And you're going to get a lot of Chris Paul. Basically, all of these Phoenix guys are showing up pretty strong in terms of ownership. So I'm going to try to go out of the way and suggest that we play some Steph Curry, suggest that you play some Kawhi, suggest that although Kawhi, I think the ownership projections are off on him because they're not accounting for Paul George as of right now. Same with McCollum. But Kawhi, McCollum, but I like the Joe Val. I do think Joe Val stays reasonably low-ish owned considering the size of the slate. And then I don't think Christian Wood's going to get much ownership. And I just think it's worth taking a shot on the guys at low ownership. We we have to get different on these small 4 gamers. So these are the guys who I'm sort of looking at as the spend ups. I also think like the mid tier range, if you want to go with a more middling build, I don't think anyone's playing Jaden Ivey at 6,800. I think it's worth a gamble. Is he my favorite play on the slate? No, but I do think that there's enough upside for him there for it to possibly pay off. Kyle Kuzma would be another one of those guys you could consider. Jordan Poole would be another one of those guys you can consider. But I would be trying to specifically go out of my way to play a less optimal play because if you want to play the chalk tonight, I think it's just going to be much more condensed with all the value that's out there. Of the value that's out there, let's get to that, and then I'll answer questions for the rest of the time. I do think Batum is reasonably good at 3,200. Jackson Hayes, we've seen this go wrong before, but I still think it's pretty good value at 3,600. Then you've got the 4K guys, the Norman Powell, who's probably the one I feel the most comfortable with. Trey Murphy, I would be probably below the field if I was playing on Trey Murphy because I think his ownership is going to be higher than maybe it. I don't think it should be. Just that it's high enough to where I can try and fade certain guys here. Robert Covington, anytime he gets significant ownership, is always a guy you can look at fading. In a vacuum, I like him. Overall, I don't know that I need to play him here. Same with DeAndre Ayton. Same with Chris Paul. Don't feel like I need to. I think I can be underweight on all those guys. I think I could be underweight Isaiah Stewart at high ownership. I could be underweight Kristaps at high ownership. The guys who I'm less willing to are some of these other guys. I think Batum. I think that Najee Marshall. I think those are some of the better values that I like anyway. Although the projections are still updating, it's a little tricky to try and get the median averages because we still have some players that are questionable, even though we already have a bunch of guys announced out. So that's a general outlook of what I'm doing. I'm going to pop on in and see what you guys are saying in chat real quick. Yeah, and Rich B, right off the bat, I see the Murphy from New Orleans. I'm totally good with it. Lou Dort, I don't like. The thing is, Lou Dort is fine in a vacuum. Okay, I don't think that it's not like he's going to get like ball handling responsibilities because there's no Shea. So I don't particularly feel strongly about Lou Dort. I'm sorry, because there's no Giddey. I just think if you want to play Lou Dort, go ahead. I wouldn't be playing Lou Dort on this slate. It's sort of like playing Lou Dort on every other slate. It's not like he's a guy who creates or gains any extra usage really with Giddey off the court. So I don't really care about Lou Dort too much. It doesn't really translate that way. No problem, Adam. Good to see you, buddy. Let's see. We've got Rich in here. What's up to my man, Rich? Adam, Gabe's in here as well. And keep popping in questions. I'm just going to tell you some other things that I'm doing. I think it's a slate you could leave some money on the table. I wouldn't be leaving heavy amounts, but if you leave like 400 or 500 on the table, I think this is kind of the right slate to do that. That would be one strategy I would employ, because I think that there is a lot of ways this can go differently. Again, just going through teams here, Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham, I think are both really interesting for Detroit. I'm willing to fade some of the Isaiah Stewart chalk and maybe play some Jalen Duran instead. I'm willing to fade Porzingis chalk anytime. And if he's going to be super chalky, I'm okay with taking the fade on it, even though, again, I like him in a vacuum. Luka is it's very hard not to like Luka in this matchup tonight. So I would suggest playing Luka with one of the other spend ups that I mentioned. I like McCollum as a possibility, but I really like the Joe Val play, and I think it's going to more people are going to be on it. I think my projections haven't updated. The problem is I only like it if it's lower owned, because if you're going to put like incredibly high numbers of amounts of ownership on these guys, I just don't think that they have to smash their price often enough. I think this game ends up slowing down quite a bit with all the guys out for New Orleans. And the guys I would be looking to is I kind of like Najee Marshall. I'd wait for a starting lineup. Kind of like Larry Nance as a little bit of an overpriced play. And then you got the McCollum, Joe Val as the main, the main guys over there. But somebody's going to have to do the work. So I would probably be playing Luka with one of McCollum and Joe Val. And then I like the idea of taking the long shot Steph play, the low ownership Steph play, just because the ownership everywhere else. It is really hard to explain why Shea wouldn't be the obvious play. It's just the ownership is the only reason. I just think the ownership is going to be so heavy on him that I would be willing to take a chance, hope for a blowout. Maybe he doesn't get his fourth quarter run. Hope that Steph has one of his 8-3 games or something like that. It's not so. Again, this would be one of those slates where I would not be playing my favorite plays. I'd be playing my weird low owned stuff. Oh my God, did we lose Kawhi too? Did I miss something here with Kawhi? Let me know, because I had some family stuff to deal with all day, and I know they're not playing him a ton of minutes, but I still have the feeling that you could take that play tonight. I think they're going to let him go at some point, but mainly I would be trying to play one of like a Steph with Luka, one of the guys from New Orleans, and then you have all this extreme value out there. That's just sort of the way that I would be trying to build. Or I would go with one of Cunningham or Ivy. I think Ivy's going to be the low owned one. I'm going to double check my current projections of the ownership on Cunningham, and yeah, just a little more ownership than I'd want. I think you're going to have to try to get different if you want to give yourself in a GPP today. Kawhi is officially out. Okay, so then I don't like Kawhi. This is getting to be a ridiculous slate. This is definitely a slate you can leave money on the table. Reggie Jackson, tremendous play, but obviously going to be popular. Norman Powell would be my next favorite play from the Clippers, and Batum. Those would be my three favorites. I think I would fade Covington chalk anytime, because we know his usage doesn't ever increase really. And Terrence Mann, sort of a similar type of deal. We've seen this story with the Clippers before for the last couple of years, so we don't need to figure it all out now. And I think what ends up happening is I think the Phoenix guys are going to end up actually being lower owned than they're projected for currently. So I would be trying to get some exposure to some of this potentially lower owned Phoenix stuff. And again, you get it in the later game. And we just know that there's a lot of stuff out there that, even as much as we know right now, there's still stuff happening. So it's really hard to get the projections to update, especially because I only have another 8 minutes before I have to go. So it came out while I was on there. So there we go. Dinwiddie. I'm trying to look at why Dinwiddie would be in play even. I wouldn't even consider Dinwiddie. I think it makes zero sense. If he gets there, so be it. I could not see a reason in the world why I would play Dinwiddie here that actually is logical. I guess fading Luka, that would be maybe something, but am I missing some reason why Dinwiddie would be an optimal play when we have all those other guys who are much like, I think the guys who are at 4K are better plays than Dinwiddie at 5,400. So I think I would just skip Dinwiddie. Is there any reason to wait to see if Kerr does something weird with Min's restriction to open up the value? I think you're right, Adam. I think you're building lineups at 715. I don't think this first game outside of Cade and Jaden Ivey, well, actually probably be Jaden Ivey at low ownership, and it's only an ownership play that I really like it. I probably would just skip this first game and see how the starting lineups shake out for the rest of the game. So I wouldn't be building any lineups till 7:15 Eastern time. I wouldn't not building. I wouldn't have my lineups finalized until 7:15 Eastern time. That's where I'm at. Slate is going to be one of the value plays, but the question is which value plays, right? So we don't have the answer for that because we don't have the starting lineups, and we're not going to have them for another hour. which is it even speaks more to why you want to stay away from this first game unless you want to take a chance on a low-owned play. Because paying up for one of these guys, you might be paying up for somebody that's a much worse play than the guy you have later in the day. And the value on there's no standout value on Detroit. Isaiah Stewart is fine. I don't feel any which way about it. If Kristaps is going to be really heavily owned, as is Bradley Beal, skip it. Just for me, I don't care what the results are. I don't care what happens tonight. In my opinion, you're doing a better job playing DFS if you skip the first game tonight, unless you want to take a shot on one of the low-owned plays, which would be Jaden Ivey, Jalen Duran, something like that, to add to your already existing value. But it's really hard to analyze what the value is going to be when you have multiple stars out for multiple teams. We don't know who the starting lineup is going to be for New Orleans. We don't know who it's going to be for the Clippers. We don't know who it's going to be for the Thunder. And we don't know if there's going to be something weird Kerr does with the Warriors. So we have a lot of stuff to keep an eye out for. We're not going to know about the Warriors till later, but I'm okay. I think it's going to be one in the Dallas-New Orleans game and the Clippers and OKC game. I don't think I'm telling anything crazy by saying that. I think that's pretty much the obvious thing. But you're going to want to see what the starting lineups are. And what I would suggest is getting some exposure to guys off the bench. One guy who stands out a little bit for me tonight is as a long shot play, not a good medium play, not a good average play, not a good logic play, but a good median, a good upside play is Poku, because the rest of the value is going to become obvious, but we're going to want the starting lineups before we get there. You know what I mean? No matter whether he starts or not, Norman Powell, who's going to start it, I assume, and Batum, I think are both the Clipper guys that I would like the best. Trey Murphy, I think, has a bust path, but I think he's going to be. I think he's a really good play. I just think the ownership is going to end up flocking to him. I would fade the Covington chalk, any Covington chalk, anytime. And again, people are going to play all the Clippers. I think he's the one I feel the most fadeable about. You could argue for Batum as well. It depends on how the starting lineup shakes out. 3K player do I like better, Moody or Coffee? As of right now, neither. Okay, let me rephrase that. If Coffee starts, then I like Coffee. I don't see any reason to go play Coffee to force him in there. It certainly could happen. Like we've seen him get there, right? Before in these types of situations where they've had these guys out. He's played 6 minutes this season. I don't see any reason that we need to go down. Why do we need to pay 3K for guys when we're paying only 3,200, 4K, 4,800, 4,800, 4,100, 3,200 for all of these other guys who we know are going to get a ton of minutes? I would just not do that personally. So I don't see either of those guys unless we hear something about what happens. Again, we're getting more news in here. Not quite, but I don't see any reason why we have to get that creative for the value. If I was going to try and find a value that I would like, it would have to have I don't know, some sort of logic to it. And if Coffee starts, he's going to be chalky. If he doesn't start, I don't know how many minutes he's really going to play. You've still got Batum, Wall, Boston, Kennard, who are all going to probably get minutes tonight. We've seen the Clippers do this a million times before. It's really hard to project for Coffee's minutes, but if he does start, he's probably a strong play. Man from OKC, I think is fine. Another guy who I feel like I can fade as long as Shea's in the lineup. And I probably would be fading Trey Mann. I wouldn't be playing Trey Mann at 5,500. In fact, what's weird about OKC is that's why I like the idea of playing Poku or Bazley, because I think they actually have some ceiling ability. And Trey Mann is just expensive enough. And we've seen him literally without Shea and without Giddey do absolutely nothing in this exact same spot multiple times in the past. So I don't know if I want to do that. So let's talk about, pop in some other questions and we'll keep going, because that's the way I'm going to have to deal with it. We're an hour away from probably getting starting lineups for the teams that we really want to know what's happening with. Specifically, what do we do with the Thunder value? What do we do with the Clipper value? And it's going to depend a little bit on who's starting in all of those cases. Again, Trey Murphy, who I like a lot as a player, I think he becomes fadeable to some extent if his ownership creeps too high. Now, if his ownership doesn't creep too high, of course I like him, but maybe what you do is you switch over to Larry Nance, who should have lower ownership than Trey. And that would probably be what I would do if the ownership gets too high over there. But the priorities are all going to depend. It's really hard to do this show this early because they're all going to depend on what happens. And it's really annoying to me, by the way. Most of these teams didn't play yesterday, most of them. There's no reason in the world why we should be getting this news so late. We should have starting lineups out. We should have all this stuff done. It really pisses me off, and it makes the NBA kind of a shit show. But also, there's edge. I mean, there's two ways to look at it. But I really like the idea of trying to find either the counter cheap guys or pairing the lower owned of the top end spends. To try to middle out your build is definitely an interesting strategy tonight, but it's really hard to make sense of it because you just have so much value, and you're probably getting 50 plus from Luka. You're probably getting 40 plus from McCollum. You could get 50 from Joe Val, although again, if his ownership creeps high, we know he gets in foul trouble quite a bit. I sort of like the idea of taking maybe a shot on overspending Christian Wood, on not overspending, but spending for Steph and just hoping he has one of his crazy Steph games. But overall, it's really hard to decide at this moment. The guys who I don't want to fade are Reggie Jackson. You could argue for all the other guys in the Clippers. The one thing that's different this year when they've rolled out these lineups is John Wall is there now. And I haven't heard anything about him being out. He's playing limited minutes-ish, but I don't feel great about the Coffee, Kennard, other guys. I just feel like I'd rather play Powell and Reggie Jackson from there. I'd rather play Shea and Poku as my tournament play from OKC. Maybe not together necessarily. I'd love to play Luka. Don't have any interest in anybody else from Dallas except for a long shot Christian Wood play that no one else is going to play. And that's just because no one else is going to play it. I don't think it's some awesome play. He's also, he's put up 41 and 47 in 24 and 25 minutes. I think that's pretty solid against a Pelicans team that, again, is a little bit of a revenge game for him and a front line that he should be able to exploit because Joe Val doesn't like to come out to the 3-point line. And when Joe Val's not on the court, you have Jackson Hayes, who's not going to be able to handle him down low. From the Pelicans, the guys who are the hardest to fade for me would be McCollum. And I think there's definitely worth taking some shots on Devontae Graham. I think Trey Murphy is a great play, but I think he gets too much ownership. So I'm probably going to fade that. I probably would fade that. And I would probably slide towards like a Larry Nance or a Najee Marshall instead. And then from the late game, all things being equal, everybody playing and who's scheduled to play right now, I would probably be fading that whole situation personally. That's just where I'm at. All right, let's see. Who do you prefer, Poku or Bazley if picking one? I prefer Poku, but I think it's really close. So I have no issue with either. I would say it's Poku like maybe 60-40 for me, but I have no problem if you want to go Bazley. I feel like this is in the end, if you have Luka and hope you hit on the random cheapos like everyone else. I guess that's somehow cheap guys get too owned to fade those. Yeah, it feels like one of those crazy slates. I would practice some restraint on this one. I've got to run in just a minute because I'm already late for my family call. But I'm sorry not to have more for you. Sheets is going to have updated projections at 6:45 Eastern, which hopefully we have the 7:30 games, the lineups out for at least the 7:30 game. I don't think we'll have the 8 o'clock one by then, but that's really what's going to be what determines it. I will be in Discord, and basically everybody on OKC has weird minutes. They're completely tanking. Okay, it's really hard to try to project the minutes for the OKC guys. But Poku's minutes are weird, just as weird as, if not weirder than Bazley's, and it's going to keep being this way. They're wasting these guys' careers, and that's what they're going to do. So you are speculating. Shea is the only guy I feel actually comfortable with. Reggie Jackson is the only Clipper I feel completely comfortable with, and Norman Powell. Luka is the only Mav I feel completely comfortable with. CJ I feel completely comfortable with. Those are the 5 guys who I would start my lineups with, and then I would figure out the value pieces around them based on how the lineups come out. Anyway, I appreciate you guys. I'm sorry it's kind of a crazy week. It's going to be a little bit up and down for me. I'm going to try and make it in at least to do an appearance every day, and I'm going to try to at least get all my stuff uploaded. But this is one of those weird slates. Tomorrow we've got a monster slate, and I will be around, but I don't know. Again, it's going to be a lot of decisions in Discord, so I will get to as many things as I can. And I'll be around all night in Discord trying to help anybody out who has it. I've got to run. I appreciate all you guys. Sorry for this tonight. And remember, keep an eye out for Sheets' projection update at 6:45 because we'll have a lot better of a feel for where this slate is. And just want to remind everybody, please give us the like and subscribe and everything. One of the things that makes Sheets' projections so great is that he is aggregating the entire, basically everybody in the industry's projections, and he's putting a slant on it geared towards who's been the most accurate historically. What else could you want? You know what I mean? That's the best way you can look at projections, and that's what we're going to try and do. But we're probably not going to know for another hour until starting lineups come out. That's my personal feeling, and hopefully sooner when Sheets does his early stuff at 6:45 Eastern time. Again, really appreciate all you guys bearing with me. If it wasn't a family stuff, and it's going to be family stuff all week for me. It's a serious week. A lot of stuff going on, but we'll do everything we can, and I appreciate everybody, and wish you all luck tonight. Any questions, pop them in Discord, tag me, and I will do my best to answer them as quickly as possible. Thank you very much.